Welcome to the Bella Vista Gardening Program. I'm Andrea Klokow, sitting in for Jerry Horner, and joining me today are Michele Pritchett and Terry Weiderhaft, fellow Benton County Master Gardeners. Today, we'll be updating you on the Helping Hands Pantry Garden, the new children's garden at the Bentonville Public Library, and sharing news about some awards recently given to the Benton County Master Gardeners. And then we'll also be talking about what you need to do in your garden in November. But first, I want to thank our sponsor, Creek's Nursery on McNelly Road in Bella Vista. When you go shopping there, please thank them for supporting our TV program. So let's begin with a hearty congratulations to both of you on the awards that your projects have received. On Thursday, last week, the Benton County Master Gardeners were presented with the Spirit of Bentonville Award by Mayor Orman. And this award is presented to individuals and groups for their outstanding contributions to the community. Both the Children's Garden and the Food Pantry Garden are in Bentonville and are led by Benton County Master Gardeners. Also, the State Master Gardeners gave Project of the Year Award to Helping Hands Pantry Garden this summer for their excellent continued work during the pandemic in 2022. So congratulations to both of you for leading these projects so well and making a positive impact on the community here in Northwest Arkansas. Let's talk about the Children's Garden at the Bentonville Public Library. Michele, tell me, where did the idea start? It's a new project. How did that get off the ground?
Well, the project started with community interest. The Bentonville Public Library is looking to expand in the next 3 years so that we can provide better for the needs of the community. And one of the things that the members of the community of Bentonville said they wanted was a learning garden for children. And so as a member of the Library Advisory Board, we had the opportunity to talk about the things that people said they wanted. And I suggested that the Master Gardeners join in the project on the library as a start for us to see how it would go and then be prepared for the expansion.
And so when did it get started? Who actually built it and when?
It started May of this year, May of 2021.
So it's very new.
Yes, very new.
Okay.
And it was built by Master Gardeners along with teen volunteers and librarians.
So how did the children get involved? How were they invited? Is it open to anyone?
Well, the library has a unique project in that it has many teens who are already volunteers for the library. I believe there was 140 teen volunteers for the library, in addition to their teen advisory board. All of them didn't work at one time together, but because they volunteer daily, they are able to be out there to ensure the garden gets watered, that produce gets harvested, that it's fed with the proper nutrients.
And did they have a schedule of activities to be done each week?
We didn't necessarily put together a schedule for them that they followed. I came in and I talked to them about, every 2 weeks they fed the plants food. They went out daily to water, and then the harvesting kind of happened as it needed to happen.
And what happened to the produce that you did harvest?
So all the produce that the teen volunteers harvested from the garden, they took into the library, and then it was distributed among the teen volunteers and also sent out to the community. So people could just stop by the children's library desk and pick up whatever produce they wanted.
Nice. So was there any particular book curriculum that went along with the garden, or just you're an experienced gardener and you know what to do?
No book, no curriculum, just this is what we would like to do. And we built the project and got it going. In the future, they will probably start doing programs that work more specifically with learning, with books in the garden. But with it just starting, it's a proof of concept project right now.
Nice. Well, what would you say was the biggest lesson that the students who were involved learned this year?
Oh boy, there were so many lessons learned. But I think the one that they were most excited about is that they could actually eat the seeds out of the sunflowers. That was fun. We planted the mammoth gray sunflowers.
Oh, the big
They grow
ones.
about 14-inch heads on them. And when I went out to the library, one of the kids asked, "How do we get the sunflower heads to stay upright so that we can see the flower the whole time?" So I explained to them the weight of the seeds is pulling the head down. But that's all to show us that it's getting closer to being ready for us to consume. And they was like, "We eat them?" I'm like, "Yes." You know, just like the sunflower seeds you pick up in the store. So we harvested the heads, and I showed them how to get the seeds off. And then the teens packaged them all into Ziploc bags, put instructions on how to roast them on those bags, and then they were put out for the community to come and take.
Oh, nice, nice. What a great connection to make between what they're growing and what they see in the store.
Yes.
Nice. Well, is the garden finished for the year, or are you still growing things?
Things are still growing, but they have mostly greens that are left to be harvested right now. We've also planted in strawberries that are growing. There's garlic that's been added in. They'll be growing over this winter time. Some potatoes that are still in there that should sprout up come spring. So things are still there, but not ready for harvest necessarily.
So you planted both vegetables and flowers.
We did because we wanted to have a pretty garden since it was there front facing on the main street of Bentonville. So every garden is edged with flowers, be they marigolds or, I think the marigolds, we have African marigolds that edge every bed. We also have some echinacea and hibiscus that are in the beds to add a little color to them. And what we did is we separated the beds. We have 6 of them. We initially started, we were going to have 4 beds, but the librarians were so excited by the progress we were making, they asked us to add in 2 more. Okay. So we went to 6 beds, and we did, 1 bed was greens. So we planted in kale and Swiss chard and spinach. And then the other bed was root vegetables. So we planted in beets and potatoes and carrots. And then there was an arch that connected those 2 beds. And on that arch, we added in the Chinese long bean, and we added in just regular green beans to grow over the arches. The next bed we did was like an Italian garden bed, which we added in tomatoes, eggplant, peppers, and onions. And then we added in annual herbs like parsley and cilantro. And then the next bed we did another Italian bed, but this one we added in perennial herbs. So on the edge of each bed we have, sage and thyme and all those things that you would have that can come back each year. And then the other 2 beds were squash beds. And those beds we grew squash. We did a 3 sisters bed with squash, corn, and beans, and then one was just squash. And lastly, we had our sunflower house where we grew sunflowers in the shape of a little house for them to walk through.
Nice. That's an amazing variety of things to grow in your first year of the beds. Wow. So I understand the library is going to be expanding in a few years. What's going to happen to the garden at the expansion?
Well, right now the garden we have is temporary. The building will actually go over that space. But there are plans for there to be a garden on site. And right now it's looking like it might be front-facing on Main Street, so that when everybody drives by there, immediately see the garden. But the architects are still in their plans, and we'll see eventually where it lands. But for now, it's going to be there. Well,
nice. It sounds like your design of having a pretty garden will be even nicer when it's right out front, because right now it's tucked around the side of the building, kind of difficult to get to.
Yes.
Oh, interesting. Well, you have started another garden as well at Helping Hands. You had a hand in starting that too, didn't you?
Yes. So,
tell us about the origin of that.
Well, next year will actually be 10 years,
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, it'll be 10 years. We have to find something to celebrate. But we started in 2012. It was interesting because I actually lived in Fayetteville at the time. And I attended church there. But we had started some small garden beds at our church there in Fayetteville. And I was doing Bible study here at the Bentonville Seventh-day Adventist Church here. Okay. And they were interested in starting a garden. Several members wanted to start a garden as a way of helping the community, but they weren't gardeners. And so they asked me if I would run that project for them. And so I was like, sure, I would love to do that. And we came in and started off at Helping Hands. At the time, Helping Hands actually had like flowers growing out there. I think it was sunflowers and some other things that were growing, strawberries that were growing out there. But everything was worked in the ground. And so when we first came in, I'm a Mississippi girl, so when I first came in and hit red clay, I was like, what?
Yeah.
So we tilled. The place where we have the children's garden now is actually where we first started out. We tilled that soil and we tried to amend it as much as we could, and we started planting there. Later in the summer, we were able to receive a grant from the Home Depot Foundation. Oh. And with the assistance of the members of the local Home Depot store, we came out one day and we built in 20 additional raised beds.
20?
Yes,
okay.
we built in 20 raised beds, and we also put up a fence to go around the garden. Okay. And from there, we just continued to work. We were at that point, we didn't have the fancy irrigation system that Terry has installed. So we were pulling water from the building with hundreds of feet of hose coming from the building all the way over to the garden. It took us about 5 hours a day to water the garden.
What?
Yes, it was a project, but it was a work of love. And we're very thankful that, was it 2015, 2016? 2016, the Master Gardeners joined us. And the project has blossomed ever since with the help of so many talented gardeners.
Oh my, I'm sorry, you got me at 5 hours a day of watering. That's fascinating. So you still run the children's garden out at Helping Hands, don't you?
I do. Well, I have a passion for children. It's something that I've always enjoyed, working with children from the time I was young and leading children. And so giving them the opportunity to have what I had when I was a child. My parents, I grew up in the inner city. Most people thought I grew up in the country because, we actually had a large garden. And the reason why we had a large garden is because my parents talked every neighbor into giving us the backyards of their homes so that we could have a garden. And they would have all the children in the neighborhood work that garden, and then we would harvest things from there. It was an experience I loved and an experience I felt like every child should have.
Oh,
So
interesting.
we took that to the garden.
Interesting. So how many students do you have out at the Helping Hands Garden?
Since the pandemic, we've decreased the amount of students that we had. We used to run about 50 students a year who would come out. So I would do 2 classes a day, 25 students per class. That was not a day, but on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I would run a class. And then in addition, I would also have a class for our church school kids from our Bentonville Seventh-day Adventist school, which was about 15 students who would come out and work once a week in the garden. Now we have 10 who come regularly, who are homeschoolers, and then we have about 15 from the church school who come and work.
Wow, so between the 2 gardens, at the library and at Helping Hands, you impact about 200 students.
Well, I hadn't thought about it really.
That's a big impact. That is a big impact. Well, thank you so much for that. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Bella Vista Gardening. Let's continue our conversation about the Helping Hands Food Pantry Garden. Terry, you've been here to discuss the Food Pantry Garden before at Helping Hands. Can you give us an update on how many pounds of fresh produce you grew this year?
So this year, and we're probably done, but you never know. Sometimes some stuff comes in later. We're at 2,972 pounds out of the garden itself this year. Wow. And then we've started where we have people bring in stuff from their home gardens too, so there's some additional there. The 2,972 is our second best year so far.
I was going to ask, how does that compare to last year?
Last year we did not. We had some issues with some stuff last year. So last year we were around 2,400 pounds. But in 2018, and you may remember this, we had like 6 squash beds that just went nuts. And so we had over 1,000 pounds of squash that year alone. And then with the other stuff, we were almost at 3,100 pounds that year. So.
Wow, 2,972 is getting pretty close.
Yeah, we're within we're within 100 pounds, but there's no way we get 100 pounds.
No, I remember in 2018, I harvested 110 pounds in one day.
Yes.
I had to use a wheelbarrow to haul it all into the food pantry.
Yes, we've got pictures of squash. Just it got to where you like going out and harvesting, but it got to where you'd go out and go, I don't want to do the squash today.
Will that zucchini wait another day?
Yeah.
How many raised beds do we have out there now?
So this year, that do vegetables and berries.
Yes.
Because we do have a little bit of other stuff going on. That do vegetables and berries, we had 48 raised beds total.
48 beds. And so when Michele and her group started the garden with the raised beds, they built 20. And so then the Master Gardeners have added 28 beds.
Yes.
In this year. Now you're building
Yes.
more.
Yes. We've spent 2 or 3 weekends out there. Once the weather cooled down a little bit, we've been out there some on the weekends, and we've got 9 in place right now, and there's going to be 3 more. Now, only 6 of those probably are going to vegetables and produce. And one of our partners out at the garden is the Master Gardener people who do the plant sale.
Okay.
And so there's 6 of the beds are for them. So.
Okay, so you're going to have, in this coming season, you're going to have 54 raised beds
Yes.
producing fresh produce for
Yes.
the food pantry garden.
Yes. And it's mainly Master Gardeners, but we do have a couple partners too that help us. So there is some extra labor out there. So the children's beds, we're partnering with Growing Up Green.
Yes.
And so we have children's beds. And when Michele initiated the garden out there, it was her main help was her church, the Seventh-day Adventist, and they are still out there. I think they have 8 beds.
We have 8
that
beds,
they do.
yes.
Okay. So tell me, what do you do with all of the produce? Walk me through you plant the seeds, you grow it, tend it, water it, harvest it, and then what?
Okay, so at harvesting time, and we are very fortunate in my mind in that we are literally like 50 yards from the food pantry at Helping Hands. I mean, you walk across the parking lot and you're at the Helping Hands food pantry. So as stuff gets harvested, it gets dropped off that day, and usually, I'm going to say 95% of the time, stuff's harvested in the morning because it gets hot in summer in Arkansas. So people are usually done harvesting by 9 o'clock or so. It gets delivered to the food pantry immediately upon being harvested, walked across, or if it's a big day, it's in a wheelbarrow or a couple wheelbarrows. We've done over 100 pounds certain days. So it gets dropped off there. The food pantry, I believe, if I'm right, opens up at 10 o'clock in the morning. And so everything we do basically goes out that day to people in the community. It's given out. They have 30 families a day, I think, that come through the food pantry. So
That's fresher than you can get it at the grocery store.
fresher than you get it at home, probably, out of your own garden, probably.
Yeah.
So.
Well, do you have a total on the last, what do we say, 6 years that you've had these 48 beds? What is your year 6 year to date total?
So
harvest?
last year we finished up 5 years, and we were at 11,350 pounds was where we were at.
Wow.
And so this year then, when you add in the home garden stuff, we were at 3876. So that brings our total to over 15,200 pounds in 6 years.
Wow.
So that's 7.5
7.5
tons.
of fresh produce.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool.
Wow. That is. What a service to the community. Well, tell me, do you have any new projects planned for the garden this year?
So we've started some things. As harvesting was kind of ramping down, one of the things and this actually kind of started a little bit last year with Susan Ashi on her own. She did a winter garden last year, put up some hoops, some cloth to protect stuff, and put in some greens. And basically, like Michele was talking, some of their greens they had done at the library. The Swiss chard, the spinach, the kale. She did all those last year, and it was amazing. Come February, early March, she had some really nice looking greens that she harvested. So this year we've got 3 other gardeners who have joined her, so we're up to 4 beds. We're doing winter stuff, and that might hopefully grow a little bit more as we go. We've been adding beds. We talked about that. We've added an area where the plan is, we spent a lot of time bringing in some compost and soil, where the plan is to do some figs next year.
Okay.
So we're going to see how that, we haven't done figs before. We're going to see how that goes. And I guess the other big thing I would say is we've got plans for some apple trees.
Oh,
This year.
delicious.
So, and again, we're trying to do trees that are native to the area, if you will. So there'll be less maintenance, and hopefully we'll see how it goes.
Well, good luck with that. How many gardeners does it take to plant, maintain, water, harvest the Helping Hands garden?
Yeah. So I guess my best estimate this year would probably be, we probably had about 30 gardeners who were there multiple times, pretty consistently throughout the year. And that's mainly, the number one thing they do is they adopt a bed. So they have their own bed where they're, like you said, kind of start to finish, make sure it's cleaned out at the beginning of the year, do the amending, planting, and then as the year goes by, the maintenance that's, pulling the weeds and pest control, which we could get better at, but we do all that. So that's the biggest group of people. But then we also, when it comes harvesting time, we have 4 or 5 weeks that's pretty intense on the harvesting. And so we have some of the same people who adopt a bed do harvesting, but we also have people who haven't adopted beds, but can give us one morning a week during the summer to come out and do the harvesting, because peak time, it's not unusual to have 100-pound harvest day. I mean, we don't have them every day, but we probably have 4 or 5 every year where we have 100-pound days. So harvesting's a big thing. And then we do get a few people who will just come out 2 or 3 times in the summer and do weeding. We're close to the trash compactor at Helping Hands, so there tends to be some litter accumulated in our area. So people will clean up the litter. We've got tools and storage sheds that need organized and maintained. So there's always, if you show up that day and want something to do, there's stuff to do.
So there's a lot more to maintaining a big community garden than just picking a ripe tomato.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you both so much for being here today. And thank you for everything you do in the community. It's much appreciated and adds tremendous value. Now, I'd like to tell everyone about what they can do in their own gardens here in November. It's November, as Terry said, is the end of the season. It's about time to put your garden to bed. If you don't, if you're busy, if this is a busy season for you, that's okay. You can still garden next spring. You just might have a little bit more to do. Well, let's start with the annuals and herbs. Summer annuals are almost gone, and after the freeze coming up this week, they probably will be gone. So you can plant pansies if you want winter color. They often do very well over the winter. They are heavy feeders, and so you'll want to make sure you do fertilize them. And should pop back in the spring again, even if they get a little nipped by the cold. Perennials, the mums right now are showing wonderful color. You may need to spray them with deer repellent if you live in Bella Vista because the deer love mums. Some people cut their perennials back over the winter, some people don't. You will make the wild birds happy if you leave a few stems with the seed heads uncut. That provides both food and shelter. But be sure not to trim your salvia right now. They have hollow stems, and if the water accumulates in the stem and freezes, it will split and freeze the plant. Roses, for those of you who have roses, after a few freezes, you can mulch them for the winter. If they've grown really tall, you might want to cut them back a little bit right now so that they won't rock in the wind and possibly snap off a branch. But you'll want to save your heavy pruning for the end of winter. Lawns, rake your leaves and keep them off of the lawn. They smother the grass, but you can, well, I'll tell you later what you can do with those leaves in just a minute. But the lawns should be about 2 inches high going into winter, and you can overseed them if you want for your fescue lawns. Trees and shrubs. You can still plant trees and shrubs in November. Monitor the water over the winter months. If we go for a very long period without any water, you will want to water those new trees and shrubs. And it's a good time to cut dead branches off of your rose of Sharon, if you have one. The vegetables. Add organic matter to your vegetable beds to be ready for the spring planting that will break down over the winter and be excellent fertilizer for your vegetables in the spring. This is also a good spot to put your leaves. If you've mulched them, you can spread them around your vegetable garden. And while you're out there, just be sure to enjoy the crisp fall weather and the beautiful colors that are out right now. So if you have any other questions about gardening in November, the Bella Vista Garden Club website is filled with gardening information. You can find that at bellavistagardening.com. I'm sorry, bellavistagardenclub.com. And the next garden club meeting will be in January of 2022, and there's more information about that on the website also. So thank you, Michele and Terry, for joining me this month, for all the information that you've given us, and also for your contributions to the community. And I hope you enjoyed this program and that you'll tune in again next month. And as always, don't forget to stop and smell the roses.